What's going on, guys? Today has definitely been a good day for Yu-Gi-Oh! As YCS Orlando is currently wrapping up as we speak, but more importantly, another hat format online tournament has just concluded as well, and that was the Pleiades Payout 4. And while this is a slightly smaller event, I always want to bring you guys the best coverage for online hat format events so you can stay up to date with cool techs and what decks are currently topping. And these are all held again through the hat format Discord and played online. So if you guys want to play in any of these, make sure to join the hat format Discord. And yeah, so this event, again, the Pleiades Payout 4, it is one of the smaller online hat format events. I think this one only had about 15 players, and while that might not be the biggest amount, what is nice is for the players that actually play this, I believe the top 4 actually go and end up splitting all the prize money, so that is really cool. Again, not the biggest turnout, but at the same time, the reward is pretty nice, and always playing more hat format is always a good time. So right now, as usual, I want to go over what decks entered and then go over the topping deck lists. So let's get straight into it. So again, 15 players entered, and here are what entered. We had 5 Geargia, so a third of the event was Geargia. This should be no surprise. Geargia has been rampant in these tournaments the last few times, and while the last event did take place, the Moraltech Monthly, which I did a tournament review on as well, while there was a lot of Geargia in that event, none actually ended up making top 8, which was very interesting with how overrepresented it was. So it'll be interesting to see if it actually topped this event. After that, there were 3 Artifact Trap Tricks. That's actually the deck that ended up taking down the last Moraltech Monthly, so we'll see if it could do the 2 in a row. After that, 3 Mermail, 1 other. It doesn't even say down here what the other is. I wish there was a way to find that out. Maybe I can look into it a bit more, but, it's probably something kind of unique that it's not even having a label for. So I probably should look into that for future event coverage. After that, 1 Mythic Ruler, so finally seeing a little bit of Mythic Ruler popping its head in there, as it hasn't really had much of a showing the last few events. 1 Sylvan, so again, another deck that hasn't been showing up as much as you would expect it to, given it is a pretty solid deck overall, so cool to see that. And then lastly, 1 Constellar Artifact. It is the Pleiades Payout. There's got to be a Constellar deck in there somewhere. And so, yeah, overall, for a small event, seeing this breakdown, it's nothing too crazy. I guess the biggest thing is just out of 15 people, they all kind of chose one of the top 3 here. But yeah, nothing too crazy. So let's actually look at the top 4 here. We had, the Pleiades Payout. We had, in first place, Geargia. So Geargia did get its revenge compared to the last couple events where, it didn't have as much of a showing in the top cut or anything as compared to how many actually came and entered the event. So that's cool. Second place, Constellar Artifact. And I see the name here, Aram. He is known for this deck. I believe he either topped or won a Moraltech Monthly a while back, so, no new player here for that deck, so very impressive and cool to see. I'm gonna be very curious to see what type of changes he's made to his list, if any at all. Third place or fourth place, for some reason that always says third and third, so, whether this is third or fourth, we had another Geargia, so again, I guess out of 15 players, seeing 2 Geargia in the top 4 statistically should happen. And then another Artifact Trap Tricks, we see Molson Canadian. I believe he had topped the last event, but playing Fire King hands. So switching it up for this event, Artifact Trap Tricks, it'll be cool to see how his list looks for that. But yeah, so overall that is the top 4, so let's get into these deck lists and see if there's any cool techs or anything interesting to note for it. So first place, We had, okay, it was Geargia hands, which is usually the most viable version of like a competitive Geargia type deck, especially when you're expecting a lot more Geargia. The hands really add a good grind game. So looking here, they chose to play 2 Fire Hand, 2 Ice Hand. I always like that ratio. Some people go a little more overboard, but, seeing that is completely fine. 3 Accelerator, the 1 Geargiano, and the 3 MK2. 3 copies of Armor, and 3 Arsenal. And that is it for the monsters. So no hand traps in the main, which isn't the biggest deal, again, because they are playing the actual hands. So overall, very clean monster lineup. And after that, the spells: 1 Dark Hole, 1 Mind Control, triple MST, 1 Soul Charge, and triple Upstart. So again, this deck doesn't really play a whole lot of spells, and nothing here really stands out over anything else. So let's move straight into the traps. Here we have 1 Bottomless, 2 copies of Breakthrough, 1 Compulse, 3 copies of Fiendish Chain. So, some builds will play like 3 Breakthrough and 3 Fiendish. Some will go like 3 Breakthrough, 2 Fiendish. So here opting for the 3 and 2 makes sense. Stopping the attacks is always good as well, so that you can keep your extra monsters on board. So that's always very good. The 3 copies of Geargia Gear, 2 copies of Needle Sealing in the main. It's not uncommon to see Geargia play like 1 or so, but seeing 2 in the main is definitely a little different, and I'm already looking here, no copies of Wiretap, which a lot of builds will play, anywhere from 1 to 3 copies, but I guess, they just opted rather for the removal, and it clearly worked out for them. So cool to see that, and then the last 2, obviously just 2 staples, being the Warning and Torrential. Overall, very clean main deck. Let's go on to the side deck. So here they have the 1 Cycle Reader, and I'm very happy to see this, the Ally of Justice Quarantine. I actually made a whole video talking about this and how it's a really cool card. It makes so that neither player can special summon light monsters, so this is great against the artifacts, amongst other things, and I'm curious also to see if this actually ended up doing anything when I watch the replays of this and react to them against that Constellar artifact deck, because this just feels like a great card that you can search off of the Gear Gigan X. And then moving on, we see the hand traps. We see 2 DD Crow and 3 Max C. Sometimes people will main these, but at least seeing them in the side means, they're doing something right there. Seeing Crazy Box in the side is kind of funny, but I guess given the last event, there were some skill drain decks and things, and Crazy Box is just a way to survive those type of matchups. 1 copy of D-Fissure, very normal. 2 copies of Debunk. 2 copies of Imperial Iron Wall. Interesting to see why they chose this over, say, something like DNA Surgery or something like that. I guess, they didn't want their hands to get debunked, or they didn't want whatever, Geargia Engrave if they're trying to MK2, even though I believe MK2 doesn't target a card for its effect because it summons from hand potentially too. But cool to see that. The 1 Macro, again, it's just another card this deck can play very well, and 1 copy of Soul Drain. Moving on to the extra deck, I'm just going to go through this a little faster because just from quick glance, nothing seems over the top. It's very straightforward. The 3 Gear Gigan is always common. I guess Emerald. Nah, I guess a lot of builds do play Emerald, so nothing over the top there. Very clean cut list, very good. We'll see how it compares to the 3rd or 4th place Geargia list. So let's move on to the Constellar Artifact deck. So looking at this, I like this ratio already. Just clicking on this instantly, I see 1 Beagle Tech, 2 Moral Tech, and 1 Scythe. This has been a kind of interesting ratio that I've also been thinking more of. I've talked about it in a lot of videos, how I feel a little weird about the artifacts lately, or Ignition in general. And so seeing that they actually cut down on that is interesting, though they are still playing the 3 Ignition. Anyways, they play after that 3 Algiadi, 3 Kos, 3 Pollux, and 3 Sombre. Very clean there. I know some people will choose to play like anywhere from 1 to 3 of this. So seeing that there's 3, I guess just simply because of the monster count of this deck. You want to always be able to open at least a Constellar, because like if you open it with one of these, you can at least make a rank 4 or something. And usually, you want to be able to make some sort of plays, and this is also just a card that's great for follow-up. No hand traps again in the main, and I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I just kind of glanced down and saw more artifacts in the side, so let's get through this main deck first. After that, though, it looks super clean, like lots of 3 of, so 3 Ignition, 3 Double Cyclone, very interesting there, 3 Tenki, 2 Lance, 3 Instant Fusion, 1 Rhoda, 3 Soul Charge. Nothing stands out too much here. I don't know how I feel about, main decking triple Ignition and triple double Cyclone with only 4 artifacts, but at the same time, you do have, your Call of the Hauneds here and your Tenkis that can be used with the double Cyclones. So, not too bad there. Plus, this deck makes Pleiades, obviously, so you can, like, reuse these and then use these. So, I guess that's a very fair thing there. Also, this deck can spit out 5, so, if it has to go for Durendal or something like that, very good there. And again, yeah, just the 6 traps, very clean. Wow, this deck is just like full of 3-ofs for the most part. I love to see that. It means you're always going to kind of open some combination of what you want and not like awkward one-of hands, really. So cool to see that. Let's move to the side, though. We see the 1 Moraltech and 1 Scythe. I've seen, what was it, the last event, someone was siding a artifact, and so that was kind of cool, I guess, but seeing a second Scythe, that I think is probably the thing that stands out the most to me. Also, like moving ahead a little bit, 3 DD Crow, 2 Maxi, and 1 Flying Sea. That's kind of funny in my opinion too. I think Flying Sea is a great card. Into Geargia, I just played a match the other day, and Flying Sea put in so much work against Geargia, and always against any deck that makes a lot of Xyz. It's a great card. Also, seeing that they sided a second Exciton and the copy of Omega, which it doesn't look like they were maining, so actually kind of strange to see that there, but I guess in certain matchups you would prefer this not to be there. Plus, when you play Instant Fusion, it can kind of take away from the slots in the extra deck. So, playing it in the side isn't too crazy, especially when the deck is very straightforward. I guess you could kind of have extra spots in your side if you really wanted to. The 1 copy of D-Fissure, the 3rd Lance. I like that. I like Lance as a card in general. And then, oh, yeah, okay. So they're choosing to also side the Warning and the 2 Breakthroughs. So kind of cool to see that. I could definitely see in certain matchups putting these in and potentially dropping, some of the extra back row removal if need be, or even, soul charges or something if going second maybe. But then at that point, why aren't you putting in like your hand traps over like traps? That doesn't really make sense. But very straightforward main deck, and then the side deck is just all over the place. Love to see it. It's kind of like goofy, and I like that. Looking at the extra deck, we have 1 Mavelus and 1 Ojama Knight, just instant fusion targets, a 4. There's not really great 4s, unfortunately, in Hat format. Mavelus is used in some decks that rely on like Wing Beast or Wind, but for this deck, it doesn't really matter. And then obviously this is a level 5 light for Pleiades. After that, we have the Abyss Dweller Durendal Tsukiyomi, really cool card. Discard your hand, minimally 1, and draw 2. It's also a big defender. 2 Pleiades, 1 M7, 1 Exciton, 1 Gaia Dragon, 1 Lavalval Chain, which is cool. You can send, anything you really need since you're playing your 3 Call the Hauneds. 1 101, 1 Volcasaurus, 1 Shark Fortress. Love this card. I wish it saw more play. Just a double attacker, or making any monster for that matter a double attacker really good. And 1 Tyrus. Overall, cool to see this deck top. Great pilot as well. Yeah, nothing else to say there. Let's move on to the next list. So this is either 3rd or 4th. Looking at this list, I'm not going to talk too much about the main deck because overall it looks pretty similar. I guess looking at this list, the only difference I see is they are choosing to main the 2 Max C, as I mentioned previously. So that's pretty nice there. They're playing Book of Moon, whereas the first place was playing Dark Hole in the main. And then they chose a second copy of Soul Charge over the third MST. So there's that. And then looking here at the traps, they also went with 2 Breakthrough Skill and 3 Fiendish, and the same other staples. The only difference here is they are playing the Breakthrough Skills, as I mentioned previously, over the Needle Ceilings that the first place chose to play. So, again, pretty standard, a couple changes from first place, but not too far off. Looking at the side deck, they chose to play the 1 Cycle Reader, again, searchable, great against artifacts or any light-based decks. 2 DD Crow and the third Max C. So very similar. I believe the first place list was also playing 2 and 3. Let me actually go back and check. Yeah, 2 and 3. Let's see here. Dark Hole. Okay, so they are siding it at least. They're also siding the third MST and the D-Fissure as similar to the other one. Then this one is playing 2 Blackhorn, 3 Debunk, the 2 Needle Ceiling in the side, and the Macro. Love to see this lineup. Really nice. Again, maining these for the first place was kind of interesting. Seeing them in the side is a little more common too. Again, some builds will play like 1 and 1. So, interesting to see there. Again, looking at this side or the extra deck, nothing standing out too much. The Cairn Gorgon is nice. I always like this card to switch up targeting. And let me go back again. I don't know if they were playing the Cairn Gorgon. No, they chose the Ragna Zero. So that's also a very interesting thing, or like normal, I should say, in terms of a choice, but here they're also playing it. So what actually did they take out? Let me kind of go back and forth a little bit here. The Emerald, maybe Direwolf? Was this one not playing Direwolf? Yeah, okay, so that's the one difference in the extra deck is the Direwolf, and I guess the Cairn Gorgon, if I'm remembering. Yeah. Okay, so overall, pretty basic, nothing over the top there. Let's move on to this last list, which is, again, third or fourth, and this is a H.A.T deck. We see very straightforward artifact lineup of 1 Beagle Tech and 3 Moral Tech. You can't complain with that. 3 Fire Hand, 3 Ice Hand, 2 Dionea, and 3 Mermail. Really normal there. Not playing hand traps in the main is very common for H.A.T, specifically like hand artifact trap tricks, not other artifact trap tricks variants. And then for spells, we see the 3 Ignition, 1 Dark Hole, 2 Double Cyclone, 3 Pot of Duality, and 2 Soul Charge. Again, nothing stands out there. 3 copies of Sanctum, 1 Bottomless, 3 Call the Haunted, 1 Compulse, 2 Debunk in the main is really interesting, but you've been, from part of these events, I've been starting to see this a little more often, of people actually choosing to main deck the copies of Debunk, because it's just so good in so many matchups. It's great against, Mermail, which there were 3 of in this event, or the hands, or artifacts, or just so many other cards in general, hand traps and stuff. So seeing that in the main is pretty nice. 1 Warning, 1 Torrential, and 2 copies of Traptrix Trapple Nightmare to round out the main deck. Overall, very standard other than, the debunks, but that's starting to become a little bit more common. But overall, really like this list. Let's talk about the side deck. We see 3 DD Crow and no Max C. So that is very interesting. I guess with the amount of Geargia that's been entering events, you can be a little more lenient with that, though I feel you should still maybe side like 2 copies or something just in case. Because looking at this event, there was the Mermail, which it would have been good against. The other artifact trap trick decks it could be good against. And then Mythic Ruler. So it had enough that I feel maybe, again, siding 2 would have been a little nice. But, player preference, again, they did get top 4, so, pretty good there. After that, the 1 Mind Control, 2 MST. I like to see MST because sometimes, if you do drop the artifact count, then you can just put these in because ignition can be a little weird. 2 copies of Knock for Geargia and other, decks playing hands that might set them, or just in general. The 1 Deep Dark and 1 Acid, very normal. 2 Blackhorn, again, very normal. The 3rd Debunk, love to see when they play the 3rd copy in the side. And 2 copies of Deprison, again, probably for hand decks and stuff, simply because you've been seeing a lot more hands topping these events more recently. So cool to see that as well. This card, fell out for a little while, but here it is again. And then looking at the extra deck, nothing too out of the ordinary. They're choosing to play 2 copies of 101, which I do like because when the format is more grindy, you're going to want at least one of these to summon into back row, because if it would be destroyed, you just get rid of a material. But also, yeah, just having the other when you actually need it is nice. And they chose to play the Heartland Draco over the Cowboy. Not sure how I feel about that, but I guess it's completely fine. For a while, I was doing a similar thing and kind of switched it over, so I guess nothing too bad there. Overall, very solid list. The side deck, I think the only thing that is interesting to me is NAWCQ, but, overall, very good list. But, yeah, guys, that was this event. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed this bit of coverage. Sorry if I sound a little out of breath. My room is really hot right now. But yeah, so that's it. Make sure to drop a like on this video, comment any questions or videos you want to see in the future, share this video with your friends, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I probably will be going over some of the actual footage from the top cut, basically, some of the gameplay and stuff, so make sure to look out for that type of stuff. And anyways, guys, I will see you in the next video.